Hello everybody! So welcome to the Social Media Policy and Content webinar. I hope you've all had a chance to successfully enter the webinar, and we'll get started. So my name is Carla Fuglum and I'm the Social Media Facilitator Intern at the CSC NL, the Community Sector Council NL. So just a few housekeeping details. There's going to be some handouts in the panel on the right-hand side. So you should see the GoToWebinar panel on the right-hand side of your screen, and there should be 3 handouts there. So one is going to be a PDF copy of these presentation slides. The second handout will be a resource list with many links relating to social media policies. And the third handout is actually a copy of a video that we're going to be showing in the presentation. But if for any reason you're unable to see or hear the video, then that handout is there in the right-hand panel so that you can access it from there. So if you have any questions throughout the webinar, please note the slide number in the bottom right corner and we will revisit it at the end. And we are going to be showing portions of real social media policies, and these are gathered from a number of organizations, and so we've taken relevant portions for the slide, so it won't be the full policy. And before we jump into it, feel free to follow and tag the CSCNL on social media platforms if you're not already. We're on Facebook and Twitter at CSCNL. So what are we going to cover today? Today we're going to cover what a social media policy is and if organizations need one, what should it include and considerations in creating it, what is social media content, what types of content exist, and how to assess what is working. So what is a social media policy? This is a corporate code of conduct that provides guidelines for employees who post content on the internet, either as part of their job or as a private person. Your organization may have 2 policies. It may have one for all employees and volunteers, and it may also have one for the person or persons responsible for posting to the organization's social media accounts. So a local example of a social media policy is the Government of Newfoundland and Labrador's social media policy at the link below in blue on the slide. And a bit later on, we're actually going to show a video version of the Government of Newfoundland and Labrador's social media policy. So, do all organizations need a social media policy? Well, it's really good to protect the brand and avoid liability. On social media, so many things are being shared all the time, every day, and it's hard sometimes to be sure that your employees know what is appropriate and not. So by setting the expectation up beforehand, it's better to avoid liability and also protect the brand from something really bad happening. It's also really good to explain the reasons and goals for the organization using social media. So when you let your employees and volunteers know the values and the aspirations for being online and growing a brand presence, then they'll be able to better align their activities online with the brand's expectations. And in line with that, it's great to educate staff and volunteers on specifically what you expect them to do or not do, and also to empower them to have confidence in participating on platforms, because if no policy is in order and they don't know what is appropriate or inappropriate, they may be hesitant to participate in social media at all. So what should the policy for all employees include? All employees or volunteers? A great thing to start off with is to have an introduction of the purpose of the policy. So why does the policy exist and what does it hope to achieve? What is it going to cover and who does it apply to? Is it only management or is it all employees? Also, it's great to have a definition of social media, including the platforms that will come into existence in the future. So say if social media is just Facebook, or if it's Facebook and Instagram, if it's also including email and text. And it should include things that could come into existence, because with social media platforms being created quite frequently, if you limit it to ones that are only out now, that could close it off for ones that come out. And also describe how social media is used by your organization. So Lifeline is an organization with crisis support and suicide prevention, and they say that their policy is intended to provide employees, volunteers, and supporters of Lifeline with clarity on the use of social media platforms. And this is a great example. It's very brief and to the point, but it lets them know that they're providing clarity on the use. The Ontario College of Teachers included a statement about what social media is, and they said, for the purpose of this advisory, electronic communication and social media encompass software, applications, including those running on mobile devices, email and websites, which enable users to interact, create, and exchange information online. And then they said examples include but are not limited to, and gave a list. And that was great that they said that it's not limited to those. So also in the social media policy, it's really important to include a statement about confidentiality of information, especially if your organization works with vulnerable groups, or if there's things that volunteers could come into contact with that you definitely wouldn't want leaving the organization. It's also a good idea to include something about intellectual property rights and other legal issues that they should keep in mind, as well as internet usage on site. So are they allowed to use the internet, and when and how should they do it, and whether and how your IT systems or internet use are monitored. The government of Alberta has a statement in their social media policy about confidentiality, and it says that they are bound by the official oath of confidentiality, the code of conduct, the communications policy, the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, and the Internet and Email Use Policy, and must not disclose any government of Alberta information or content that they are not specifically authorized to disclose. So in this example, they cross-reference a lot of other policies that the government has. Via Rail also talked about confidentiality and copyright, and they said respect all copyright, fair use, and disclosure laws, always credit sources with citations or links, and never divulge personal or confidential information about Via Rail, your colleagues, our customers, consultants, suppliers, and business partners. And then they also said, remember that all content posted online, even on private or personal accounts, is in the public domain. So while a volunteer may put something on their Instagram and it's private and they only have their friends on there, you never know if a friend could take a copy or a screenshot of something and then make it public. So nothing is truly public. Also to include in the policy are expectations for behavior off-site, whether or not employees and volunteers can disclose their relationship to the organization, and whether or not they're allowed to use the organization's logo. Also, have some definitions and examples of appropriate and inappropriate behavior. And by using examples, it can make it really clear. Then also say what happens after a mistake. So if an employee goes online and they're promoting a great event that you guys are holding, and they accidentally say that it's on February 25th instead of February 23rd, what happens after that mistake? Do they let someone in the communications team know, and then you'll put out an apology or a correction to it? Maybe just list out what normally happens. And also consequences for inappropriate behavior. So if there definitely is a breach of the policy and it's definitely intentional, or it has grave consequences, what is then going to happen? So the Mayo Clinic says that it's important to express that you are speaking for yourself and not on behalf of the Mayo Clinic. So you might have a disclaimer saying that the views expressed are my own and do not reflect the views of my employer, or put an About Me section in the profile. You might also want to say that if you identify your affiliation with the organization, that your social media activities should be consistent with the high standards of professional conduct. And they say, unless approved by the Center for Social Media, your social media name, handle, and URL should not include Mayo Clinic's name or logo. So they were very explicit there that only people that have been approved by the Center for Social Media are able to do that. The Canadian Cross put out an example about what to do if you make a mistake. So they said, if you made a mistake, be upfront about it and contact your Director of Public Affairs to discuss and resolve it. And the YMCA of Brisbane put out that misuse of social media can have serious consequences for the YMCA, and consequently, that misuse can have serious consequences in terms of disciplinary action for staff and volunteers. So this could include possible criminal or civil prosecution or termination of your employment. And this example is by Skate Canada Nova Scotia. And Skate Canada Nova Scotia had a very in-depth and extensive and complete explanation about disciplinary sanctions. So they said, disciplinary sanctions will reflect the severity of the infraction. Minor infractions are single, largely unintentional breaches of this policy that generally do not result in harm to individuals or to Skate Canada Nova Scotia. However, major infractions are either single breaches of significance or repeated multiple breaches which violate any of the, and then they put the codes that it would violate. So they did a great job of clearly defining the difference between a minor infraction and a major infraction, and then below it they go on to explain what happens. So for minor infractions, it would be things like immediate removal and retraction of the messages in question, verbal or written reprimands, a verbal or written apology, and or other considered appropriate sanctions. Whereas for major infractions, it could include formal written notification of the nature of the violation against the social media and social networking policy, code of conduct, and ethics policy, verbal or written apologies, and even reporting to Skate Canada for further action. And then at the bottom they say that any individual can appeal the decision and disciplinary sanctions by following, and then they list the steps. So they definitely didn't leave any questions unanswered. They made sure to list it out and make it very clear. And that's in contrast to the previous example by the YMCA, which is a bit shorter. So it depends on what route your organization would be interested in taking. So also to include in the social media policy for all employees and volunteers is who acts as a spokesperson on behalf of the organization. So can employees go online and write about the organization or respond to comments about it? And specifically, who responds to negative comments from the public? Because there's been cases where employees defend their organization quite strongly online, but perhaps it was in a manner that the organization wouldn't have gone about it. So by clarifying who's allowed to do that, the organization will be able to set that up so that only approved people can do that. And who should employees and volunteers contact with questions about the policy if they don't understand parts of it? And when and how are changes to the policy going to be communicated to employees and volunteers? So an example by the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies says that their employees and volunteers, or the people that this policy is referring to, can feel free to correct others but stick to the facts. So they said, if you come across a misrepresentation of the movement, feel free to identify yourself and your organizational affiliation and correct their mistake, but do so with respect and with facts. And if you don't feel comfortable doing it yourself, please contact the External Communications Unit in Geneva, and then they provided the contact information. So those are the main things to include in a policy, but there's some other considerations when you're creating or writing the policy. So the first one might be, who's the author? Who is going to make this policy? Is it going to be someone in your communications department, or perhaps will managers from multiple departments in your organization put input into it? Could employees even have input into it? Do you think that that would make them buy into the policy a bit more if they can participate? Is it going to be written in text, or is it going to be a video format? So we'll be showing a video in a little bit, and there's also a list of video social media policies on the handout. Is it going to be internal only, or are you going to make it public by putting it up on your website? So some organizations do make it public, and other ones wouldn't, and they would only be available to people that they distribute it to. And what is the tone or voice of the policy? And this would really depend on your organization's culture and your organization's general tone in communications. So is it going to be encouraging of them using social media or deterring? Is it going to be free-flowing and giving a lot of flexibility, or really setting the expectations out clearly? And will it overlap with other policies? We saw in an example a few slides back that there was a lot of cross-reference to other policies that the organization has. Also, a lot of organizations that make a social media policy include a glossary, and this can be really good. They'll list things like what is the difference between personal use or public use of information, or what social media refers to, and so on. So just different terms. And will there be training on the policy? So along with providing this policy, are you also going to train your employees and volunteers about interactions online and about the organization's values? And how will the policy be enforced? Will there be someone that will be tracking the social media accounts and checking in on them every once in a while, or will the organization wait until someone from the public comes forward with a complaint or a suggestion or issue? And how often will the policy be reviewed? So if there's no other major changes, perhaps you'll review it once a year. So this is part of the policy from the YMCA of North Bay. And they get the readers or the audience of the policy to check off that they have read and understood it. So they need to say that they agree to adhere to it, and they understand if they violate it, what's going to happen. And the government of the province of Nova Scotia says that in terms of monitoring this update, the Communications Nova Scotia, in cooperation with the Internal Services Department and the Public Service Commission, when necessary, will monitor and update this policy annually. So it's time for a quick poll. We're going to get a bit of a feeling of how many of you guys have a social media policy. So I'm just going to launch the poll. I'm just going to click it here and click launch. So hopefully you're able to see up on your screen a question, and it's saying, does your organization have a social media policy for all employees or volunteers? And yes, no, we're currently working on one, or I'm not sure. Okay, we'll give a few more seconds there for everyone to answer. Almost at 100% of responses. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and show the results now. So, as you can see, 26% are saying that yes, their organization does have a policy, 52% are saying no, and 19% are saying we're currently working on one. So that's great. And 4% are saying they're not sure. Okay, so that's really interesting. Okay, so we'll keep going now with the presentation. So, moving on now to what the policy for the social media marketing employee should include. So it might be good to give the media marketer a more in-depth reminder of the organization's purpose for being online and explaining what they want to do online and what they're hoping to achieve. You might also want to put out the expectation for what is going to be posted on your platforms, when it's going to be posted, by who on the team will post it, and which platforms these posts are going to. You may also want to include a statement about whether communications need to be pre-approved by a manager or supervisor or someone else on the team. And if you're going to consider uniformity across your platforms. So are you going to ensure that the logos on your different platforms or the pictures and cover pictures are going to be the same to create brand recognition? Or is there going to be a bit of individuality across them? And I've even seen some organizations making guidelines for each platform. So I was looking on the City of Seattle policy, and they had a specific guideline for Twitter and another specific one for Facebook, and so on. So that's getting really in depth about what you're hoping to do on those platforms. And as we talked about, now we'll say who is responsible for replying to negative comments and how the organization would like them to go about doing that. And a final thing that I think is really interesting and a great idea to consider is accessibility practices online. So are you going to do some research or try to make sure that your platforms are accessible as possible to those who may have a disability or impairment? And this can include things like if you have a YouTube video that isn't accessible, maybe you'll have a link to a different video on your website that would be accessible. That's just one example. So this is an example by the Australian National Botanics Gardens, and they're outlining what is their purpose of being on social media. So they say that they aim to promote their mission, reach a wider, more diverse audience, educate, inform, and entertain, skipping down a couple, consider alternative viewpoints, and learn about the community and its needs. So there's a lot of great reasons to be online, and they list those out for the marketer. And the Alzheimer's Society of Ontario does a great job at explaining what the acceptable and unacceptable use of their social media channels are. So they say it is acceptable to put up relevant news articles, information related to Alzheimer's disease, dementia, or brain health, comments related to advocacy, and so on. But things that they are not going to accept and will be removed include racist, sexist, and homophobic language, personal or confidential information, for-profit content or content posted for personal gain, and so on. So they do a really good job at clearly defining the two and giving examples. So now we're going to show a video example, and this is going to be by the Government of Newfoundland and Labrador. And I'm just going to minimize this for a second and open it up here. And if you're unable to hear it, you should be able to see the handout video in your panel on the right-hand side. And if you open that, hopefully the volume will work. However, the volume is just a song, so it's not essential to hear it if you are unable to. So we'll get started with this. a good video. So that explained parts of the social media policy that they expect their employees and others to follow. And they did that in the video format, as you could see, and they didn't have someone talking with it. I've seen other videos where they have people talking, but you know, you can decide how your organization would like to do it and try out different ways. And if you are looking for other examples, there's a list of video examples in the handout. Okay, so now we're going to do a summary on social media policy. So just to recap, will you have one or two policies, so one for all employees and volunteers, or one just for the employee who will be doing the social media marketing? And for everyone, you might want to include terms on what social media is, confidentiality, disclosure, examples of appropriate and inappropriate behavior, consequences for breaches of the policy, and who acts as a spokesperson on behalf of the organization. And that's not limited to that, but those are some things to include. And for the social media marketer, a reminder of the organization's purpose for having an online presence, what to post or not post, when and where, and how to engage with the audience or respond to negative comments left from the public. So also consider the format and whether it will be public, will there be a glossary, and how will it be enforced, and so on. So now we're going to completely shift gears, and some of you might have been waiting for the social media content. And so what is content? Well, content is media that you upload to social media platforms. And what is content marketing? Content marketing is creating and distributing valuable content to attract a clearly defined audience. It means you're moving away from self-promotion towards enhancing consumer knowledge. So we're going to discuss three main areas of content marketing. So one is creating content, brainstorming and thinking of things that you can publish. There's also repurposing content, so taking content that you have already put on your social media platforms and turning it into something new or molding it so that it better fits another platform or another use. And curating content from other creators that you can put on your platforms with credit to them. And why is content marketing important? Well, it positions your brand as an industry thought leader or expert, it builds trust, and it promotes discussion and engagement more so than ads would. Axon Media in the UK reports that 70% of consumers prefer getting to know a company via articles rather than ads. And 60% of consumers feel more positive about a company after reading custom content on its site. So when thinking of putting up content on your platforms, think about the purpose, because all content should serve a purpose. So how does it add value? Is this piece of content educating? Is it entertaining? Perhaps it's inspiring, or maybe it promotes a cause. Does it provoke discussion or call to action? So it could add value to your organization by asking someone to give a donation or sign up for an email newsletter. So if you've run out of ideas, there's quite a few different things that you could put up. So I have a list here that's quite extensive, so we won't go through all of them, but these are a lot of different formats of content that you could put up. So there's three that I've bolded there, and I'll just quickly touch on them. So some of you may have done a takeover already or have heard about it, but a takeover is when you invite someone such as a social media influencer with a large following on their platforms, or an industry expert, or someone that you think your target audience will find really interesting, and you invite them to take over one of your platforms for a specified amount of time, such as a day. So Snapchat is one of the accounts where this is really popular, and on Instagram as well, but it can really be any of your platforms. And you can do a day in the life, or you can get them to take over your account for the day and share their experiences with your organization and what they enjoy about it or what they do at it. And these have been really popular, and they've been really growing in the past few years. Another thing is you could do trivia questions about your organization or programs that you have to gauge the knowledge that's out there in the community and whether your audience is familiar with the programs or your organization. And there's a number of different ways that you could put those trivia questions out. You could do a poll on Twitter to ask. You could ask on Facebook and people can comment. There's multiple ways. Another thing is you could do a webinar like I'm doing today. So you could pick a topic that you have knowledge about and then put it out there and invite people to come and listen and learn. So there's a lot of resources available to help in creating content, many of which are free, some you pay a bit more, but there's resources that can give you images that are copyright free. So rather than Googling an image to put on your platform and not being sure if that is copyright free or not, some sites ensure that you can use it for personal or commercial use for free, free of copyright. So there's places like StockSnap, Free Range Stock, Pixabay, Pexels, to name a few. There's also, and I'm not sure if everyone knows about this, but there's places like WikiQuote and BrainyQuote that have a whole assortment of quotes. It's like a library of quotes, and you can go in there and type in a specific topic area and find some really cool quotes. And quotes do really well on social media. So you could take a quote, pop it into an image that's relevant to your organization, or put a really good caption explaining it. There's also video editing resources like Filmora, Lightworks, ScreenFlow, and graphic design and infographics resources like Canva and Pictochart. And these are just a few. There's many more on the internet. So content can sometimes feel stale when the same platform features are often used. So have you tried experimenting with something new recently? Have you done Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or YouTube Live? What about Twitter polls, Instagram stories, custom Snapchat geofilters, Instagram multiple photos or videos, or Snapchat lenses? So, or Twitter memories. So there's a lot of different things. I won't be able to talk about each of these today, but they're really interesting tools that you might want to try out. And practice makes perfect, so never fear trying it if you're new to it. Your audience will likely appreciate the fact that you're trying out something new, and it's a new way that you can connect with them. So another really good thing that social media marketers love is repurposing your content. So I have this image up here of an orange that's repurposed as an apple, just a bit of a metaphor, but you can take an image from a post on your website and put it up on Instagram, and that would be repurposing it for another platform or use. Another example is using a quote from slides at a gala that you hosted and turning it into a tweet. What about picking comments or questions that have been left on a Facebook post and explaining these in a question and answer session on Snapchat? You may want to select some key events and data from your annual report and create an infographic with it and put it up on Pinterest. There's also putting an excerpt of an email newsletter on LinkedIn. So if you have a company page on LinkedIn and in your update section you put part of your email newsletter up there. Or you may even do a Facebook Live session and then you can download it and put it up to YouTube, or you can embed it into your website. So those are just a number of ways that you could repurpose content. But some people also like to simply repost their most successful pieces of content from time to time. Because with so many things being added to these platforms all the time, you might have had a really successful post that people loved, like an article that people just found so helpful. So why not, a month later or a couple months later, just put that same article back up? And another thing to talk about, ways that you can identify things that would be good to repost, are analytics tools. So there are many tools that exist to identify which content is resonating best with your audience. So I'll just click through these, but most of the platforms have their own insights or analytics tools. And these are ways that you can see which content is reaching the most amount of people, how many people are clicking into it or going to your website through it, and so on. And the analytics tools are, most of them, especially like Facebook and Twitter, they have really, really good in-depth analytics sections where you can go and see all this data. You can also see information about your audience. So on Twitter, you can see things that they're interested in, also things like their income. There's a lot of different things that you can find out about them. And from this, like I think you can even see the shows that they like to watch. So from this, you might be able to adapt the content that you're putting up to better meet that audience. And even Snapchat has some basic analytics, like the numbers of people that have opened your snaps, who has seen which parts of a story that you've put up, how many people have screenshotted it, etc. And now we're going to talk about content curation, the third area of content marketing that we had listed. So this is when an individual or team consistently finds, organizes, annotates, and shares the most relevant, high-quality content. So to curate content, you've got to browse the internet, look at your favorite experts or industry leaders or wherever you'd like to get something to curate from. And so go out and discover it and then read it, make sure it aligns with your organization, and then see if you can add value to it in some way. And this might be as simple as putting up a caption that explains why your organization thinks it's useful. Or you might go along and add some extra research or add some extra information or value that you can. And then go ahead and share it. So there's a lot of features that can actually help you find things that you'd like to retweet or share. So there's things like Facebook and Instagram save functions, Twitter lists, Facebook pages to watch. Pinterest is a great place. Pinterest has many different things that you could get inspiration from. And if you have an integration platform that you use to help with your social media, look to it and see if it has a suggested content section. And also, are you signed up for newsletters and webinars out in the industry? And maybe you can get things from that. So we're moving into the last couple slides now of today's webinar, and I'd like to leave with some notes about what to be posting about. So what should your post to social media platforms be comprised of? Well, some businesses use the golden ratio, which says that 60% of your posts should be sharing other people's content. 30% should be content that you create, and 10% can be straight promotional, like donate here, or actually for businesses it would be something like buy our product here, or do this, and it's asking and requesting. However, Stephen Shattuck at HubSpot recommends a different approach for nonprofits because he was finding that that might not necessarily be the best strategy for nonprofits. So he believes that a third of your post should be appreciation, recognizing your donors and your supporters and volunteers and employees. Then another third of your postings should be advocacy, so engaging and sharing with the content of others. And the last third should be appeals, and this can be soliciting donations or help and giving those specific calls to action. And how many hours a week do marketers spend on social media marketing? Well, the Social Media Examiner had a 2015 social media marketing industry report, and they found that about 34% of marketers spend 1 to 5 hours on their social media. However, 25% spend 6 to 10 hours, and about 12% spend 11 to 15 hours. So as you're looking at this chart, maybe you're thinking about how many hours your organization spends. And of course, you'll know based on your organization what is the right amount of time for you. And this last slide says how to allocate your time on social media. So Spread Social suggests that 35% of your time should be engaging with your audience, which is quite a lot of time. So that would be replying to comments, maybe going to their pages and giving a follow, seeing what they're putting up and leaving some comments or questions. 25% could be researching and planning. So this might be researching new social media platforms that you could be on, researching new features like some of the ones we mentioned in previous slides, and researching what industry leaders or others are putting up there. And this can help you with the 20% up in the top right corner for creating and curating content, which has been the second half of the webinar. And then 10% they suggest would be dedicated to collaborating with your team, and the last 10% on analyzing past performance, like using those analytics tools we talked about to see what content is still working or what you might want to phase out. So we've come to the end of the webinar today. Thank you so much for attending. If there's any questions or comments, please put them into the panel on the right-hand side, and we'll do our best to answer them, or if we don't have the answers today, to do some looking into it. And on this slide, I've put up the Community Sector Council's contact information as well, the website and email and phone number. And yeah, thank you so much for attending. And I really hope that you got something useful out of it. And yeah, just feel free to put out those questions, and we'll do our best to answer them. Okay, so I've got one question here. It says, will my account automatically be notified if someone screenshots a Snapchat I distributed? I thought they disappeared. Okay, so it depends on which way you distributed the content through Snapchat. So if you put it in a personal snap to someone, so say to a contact or a group of contacts, they would have 10 seconds to view it and then one replay. And if they take a screenshot, either between the first play or the one replay, you will get a screenshot notification. So it will say that this person screenshotted it. If you put it up on your story for 24 hours, you'll also see it there. So if you look on that particular piece of your story, there's 3 little settings dots next to your story, and you can click those and it will drop it down. And then if you click into that part of your story, you can also see how many people have seen it and whether there were screenshots. So another question is asking, could you put up the slide again about nonprofit content percentage? Okay, I'll just go back. Okay, I think oh, content percentage. Are you referring to this slide? I think it might be. So this was from Stephen Shattuck at HubSpot. So he was saying a third of the content that you're putting up should be appreciating your supporters and volunteers and donors and employees. A third percent should be advocacy, so engaging and sharing the content of others. And a third should be appeals, and that can be specific calls to action, asking for a donation, asking for them to come out to a fundraiser, asking for them to go to your website, and so on. Okay, so I'm going to read one more. In your research, have you seen a trend in organizations raising their standards when it comes to disciplinary action related to improper social media use? I've noticed it is more common to include the words disciplinary action up to and including dismissal for improper social media use. So just wondering if you have seen some of that language also. That's a good question. I'll just take one more look at it. For that question, I'm not sure if they have been raising their standards. I think in the last few years, with so many cases going on, like there's an example that I included in the handouts from the Canadian Bar Association, and they talk about situations that have occurred with employees putting stuff online, and then the organization's going through legal action, and then the judge, of course, will decide whether it's in the employee's favor or their organization. So I think with seeing so many of these things going on, organizations have become a bit tighter in the use of words, because they want to make sure that, again, they're protecting their brand and avoiding liability as much as they can. So I would say that, yes, I do think that the wording has become a bit more strict. Okay, is there any other questions? We'll just take a moment and just see. Okay, so I think unless anyone has any more questions to put in, I think that's all of the questions that we have for now. You should be getting a follow-up email, and in that email there will be contact information if you think of any questions and you'd like to pass them along to us. Also, when you close out of the webinar today, there should be a feedback survey. If you have any feedback that you would not mind providing to us, we would really appreciate it, and it can definitely help us improve in the webinars that we put out as we go forward. Thank you so much again for attending this webinar by CSC NL, and I hope you have a great afternoon and got some takeaways from this. So signing off now, thanks so much.